Hello and welcome to Around the Lens. My guest today is Anthony Dawton, one of the co-creators of the book Edge of Hope, the Rohingya refugee camp at Cox's Bazar. Anthony is an accomplished and award-winning commercial photographer based out of London who has worked extensively with NGOs across the world. I had the privilege of actually talking to him all the way back in 2021 when he was debuting his book, Not London. Anthony, welcome back to the program.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Happy to have you back. Been far too long. Great to have you back to talk about this new book that you're doing. So why don't you go just start by telling us, what is Edge of Hope all about?
Yeah, it's a very interesting problem. It's something a lot of people actually don't know about, a lot about. It's the world's largest refugee camp by a very wide margin. So I've been in big camps that have had 250,000 people in. The Rohingya camp has nearly 1 million, has about just over 900,000. And over 60% of those are children. I have to kind of admit that although I consider myself worldly and knowledgeable, I came across this whole project doing a wedding. At the last minute, a Bangladesh family had come into London and had lost their wedding photographer. And I was called and went in and photographed the wedding for them. And talking to the mother of the bride afterwards, she looked at my work. She was an amateur photographer as well, and not a bad one at that. And she said, "Why don't you come to my country and photograph the Rohingya problem?" And I said, "Sure." And I began to research, and yeah, I think it's one of the largest problems we have at the moment, the Middle East notwithstanding, and I think it's set to get worse. It's a huge humanitarian problem. So, but it was one of the most interesting jobs I've ever done. The country Bangladesh is split on what they should do with this extraordinary problem in their country. They're a poor country, and it's a huge burden. Some people don't want anything to do with them. They want them sent back, which is impossible. A form of genocide has been committed on them. And yet there are a group of people, the people that I became very close to, who really feel something must be done. And that maybe we'll talk about that a bit too. But that's one of the great privileges of this type of photography, is not only the type of people I'm photographing who are extraordinary, but the people who kind of really put their money where their mouth is. People who look after people frankly you want to surround yourself with. It's been a double project. At the same time as photographing the Rohingya people, there's a huge problem with flooding on islands within Bangladesh, and how they can be relieved, and how they can be looked after and not be flooded so badly anymore. And I and Jim, my colleague, were doing that project in tandem.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, extraordinary.
Interesting. So obviously this and is really following, I think, a theme of what you seem to like to cover, or at least seem to focus on, which is, again, highlighting those who are struggling or suffering. And, you've definitely done a good job here of bringing this issue to light and highlighting these people, right? Because definitely this book is focused on the people. So is that drive what inspired this book, that desire to highlight those who are suffering or having maybe a difficult time?
Yes, I think it's a straight answer to that. I don't know if it's to do with age, but I don't think so. I think I've always hoped that my camera could do something useful. Being a commercial photographer is fine; you can earn a living, but all the time I've enjoyed photography. All the photographers that I've been really interested in are those, the great war photographers or the great social photographers. as far back as Lewis Hines in the 19th century and so on. I've been fascinated. And I've been fascinated, I think we mentioned this before, I think the Vietnam War is possibly the last war where the media really made a difference, where they weren't embedded in either side, and so could take photographs and publish them without censorship from the military. And I think, particularly in your country, that changed the whole sentiment towards the war, and that was happening at a very impressionable age for me. The other thing is that I have to be very careful about saying this, but I don't mean this in comparison to other photographers, but in comparison to my work, which I think is great for somebody my age. I think I'm taking better and better pictures than I ever did. And my big fear always is that the next job, I won't be as good. I will have lost it, or, my standards will have dropped. But, so far so good.
Onward and upward, and continue to progress, right? And the best thing you can do is just keep on shooting, right? And that's
right.
Kind of do your best, right? And I think if at least as I have seen as my career, like as long as I've looked back at my previous work and thought, oh, that was good, but I'm doing better now, right? As long as you're showing that progress and feeling that progress amongst yourself, I think you're fine there. What does the title Edge of Hope mean?
It means, I think, they're very close to disaster. When you go around the camp, which is enormous. I mean, I can't claim I went around the whole camp. I mean, that in 5 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there is order. People are managing. They have to walk away to get water. Food is scarce, but not at starvation level. And there are disaster problems, like they've had to build their own huts out of the local forest, and the forest is no more around. So flooding is even worse. Everything is built out of wood. So when they light a fire to do the cooking, every now and then one hut goes up, and they're so close to each other that it's often quite a large disaster. 20, 30 houses are taken out.
Does that happen a lot? Does that happen often?
I would say about once every 6 months. Yeah.
I'm sure they don't have like a fire department.
No, and it couldn't get through anyway. And the other huge issue that we thought was are the children. Recently, many of the NGOs, particularly the United Nations, UNRWA, were asked to leave, so that the Bangladesh government could take over looking after the camp. But one of the things they've done is they've closed down the schools. Wow. And the reason for that is it's not the photographic side of things, but the reason for that is they don't want these children to learn Bangladeshi. They don't want them to be given the chance to be absorbed into their economy. It is pretty weird, because they want them to go back. That's the thinking.
Right.
The problem is you can't have 600,000 children with no schools to go to and very little else to do. There are no football fields. There's nothing for these children to do. So they're going to grow up and be, I think, very difficult teenagers to deal with. And morale falls. I mean, parents' morale drops if their children aren't being educated. You don't want to think each year your child has missed out on a year of education. So it is. I think that the camp is getting bigger, and I think there's going to be a danger of them being very difficult to control. And there's a million of them. So I'm nervous. I think opening school, and the only schools that were open were the religious schools. and it's not good enough. It's great for morals, and teaching kids good things, but it's not good enough in terms of worldly education. So
I don't think there's ever an instance where lack of education it leads to good things.
No, exactly.
A large group of young people, because it's just
Yeah.
gonna it could easily spiral out of control.
Right. But
You know,
there are
throughout.
sorry, go on. Sorry. Yeah.
No, you.
I was just going to say there are many other things too. You know, when you're photographing, I mean, I think we talked about my method before, how we spend a lot of time talking to these people, either they speak English or through interpreter, and we've kind of decided that these were families that had fled their part of Myanmar, and they came as families. So we wanted to kind of have this sort of tableau notion. We wanted to get the families in their huts, standing the way they wanted, expressing the dignity they wanted, not just floundering around and cooking or stuff like that. And always we'd set them up once we'd talked to them. They're very into this idea. And then we'd say, well, we need everybody. Where's the father? Or where's the mother? And then, the interpreter would lean over to me and say, well, he didn't make it out of Myanmar. He's been killed. And that's why they're not going back. So So we felt useful. We felt if our photographs highlight this this problem and promote it, it would be great.
Yeah. When I was looking up the Rohingya crisis and looking at other content by other folks who have covered the subject, one thing I noticed is that they tend to try to put the subject or put the issue in context, right? With maybe like an establishing shot showing just how vast this issue is. And I noticed your book, it doesn't do that, which is fine. But I was just curious, what was the decision there? And also the decision primarily to focus on staged portraits. So again, you have a lot of nice, beautiful portraits of the subjects looking at the camera in their huts or in their environment, which is great, and it definitely demonstrates that. But the book is almost exclusively that. And I was just curious, what went into those decisions, that thought process?
It is a conscious decision. It slightly comes in two parts. The first is about filming or photographing the location, the environment. Well, I think that's done pretty well by lots of other good photographers, and some of them even have drones that they can send up there. For us, the environment is irrelevant, not because it shouldn't be there, but because other people do it better. For us, what's really important are the people and their feelings and their dignity, and if you like, what's happened to them. And we think it's obvious from the portraits that they live in very difficult conditions. The other thing which is quite interesting is that there are parts of because Bangladesh is a very beautiful country, there's a real risk that when you photograph a very broad expanse of these huts, they look nearly like kind of Caribbean huts with lush backgrounds. And there was just a danger we felt too that we didn't want to run the risk of people thinking, oh, well, that's rather pretty. I mean, that's why we don't shoot color, so that people don't look at clothes or vegetation and say, oh, that's a gorgeous flower, or what a lovely sarong that woman is wearing. And then it comes back to the whole day that we photograph. If we're talking to people, we're hearing their story, their problems, their difficulties. And in a way, we're saying, we're here to express visually what you're telling us. So I don't want a kind of street shot. I want them to think about how they want to present themselves to the camera. And I think that gives an interesting result because they're treated with a great deal of respect, to the point where they can they can decide how the shot should look. They can't quite decide that, but they're not taken by surprise or in an undignified position.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely. Okay, interesting.
I think, yeah,
You want them to have some more agency and control over their own, how they present themselves in your book.
yes, definitely. And I think that's part of our style, and I think it's quite rare because even while we were there were other photographers, and you could tell they were photojournalists by the speed at which they went and the rapid fire. And I could see they caught some interesting pictures, but they also must have caught pictures of people who probably didn't want to be photographed, who felt a bit, I mean, it's just not our style. They're traumatized already. They don't need to be traumatized by essentially, a bunch of white photographers coming in.
So yeah, there are obviously, like you said, there is that debate about, ecotourism or environment and activist tourism, where we as are the white guys coming into this devastated area and doing our photography and whatnot, and what is that sort of dynamic there and that role, and the debate being obviously, should there be more agency on the folks who are actually affected by the issue in terms of documenting their own story, or is it again appropriate for us to sort of be the ones to go in there and tell their story, and then we go back to our normal first world lives, right?
Yeah, yeah. And to that end, I'm very conscious too that when we do get back home and get the pictures sorted, we've then got to do something. We've got to get the exhibitions going. We've got to print the books.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As a result, the pictures have to be good and beautiful.
Yeah.
And when I say beautiful, I mean they have to be arresting.
Yeah. They have to be impactful, right? They have to leave the viewer with a sense that they've seen something that's meaningful, right? And I think your images definitely do that in many cases. Speaking of your images, a lot of them are either medium or close-up shots. Was there any desire to perhaps do more wide shots, or again, more establishing shots even at the ground level, or was again there a conscious effort to try to get as close to the subject as possible?
Well, I was hoping you would mention that, because I think if there is a criticism, I'm sure there are many to be leveled at us. Yeah, I think we could have pulled back, and we could have certainly got plenty of, if you like, faces, but we could have included the environment.
Yeah,
I think there are some wider shots, but I just it's a good criticism. We didn't make the same criticism when we were in Gaza 10 years ago,
right.
But then that was because bomb sites were so graphic that you couldn't not photograph them. But at a very technical point of view, the work that we did in Gaza, which we might talk about now because it's kind of being revived,
Yeah.
I can see was mostly shot on 35mm lens equivalent. I think you're right. The Rohingya's shot probably on the end of my 75 zoom, 70 zoom. Often.
Since we're talking about cameras, what did you take down there with you to shoot this on?
I took a Nikon Z7 II.
Okay. So you were shooting mirrorless, and what was your kit? What lens kit did you have with you? Load out.
I had what I call the kit lens. I had the 24-70 f4. Fabulous, absolutely fantastic. Didn't let me down at all. They let me down in a following trip to Bangladesh. And actually, I carried my Nikon D4, and that carried the 80 to 200 zoom, 70 to 200 zoom, 2.8.
Okay, so you had two cameras and basically one lens for each camera, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So keeping it light.
D4's heavy. Well,
keeping like you didn't have like a huge backpack full of multiple lenses, right? It was just basically the two bodies.
Well,
and
the
the two
backpack
lenses,
still seemed to be huge, but we lit a lot.
Okay. So you had like a flash kit.
Yeah, we hope it was really subtle what we used. Always off camera, and we still operated, which is a great thing about these new Nikon cameras and all of them, of course. A lot of this stuff is shot at around 3,200
Right. Mm-hmm.
ASA, and then a little bit of kick, a little bit of fill.
Yeah, no, I would say for the most part, the lighting seems generally natural.
Yeah,
There's a few instances of shadow and stuff like that. Obviously that's going to be an issue when you're shooting inside people's houses and you don't have a lot of space. But considering the situation, what you were trying to achieve with it, right? You did the best you could with what you had, for sure. I mean, it probably can't be easy to haul around a flash kit in a refugee camp, I imagine.
No, well, you
can't plug in, right? I mean, I don't imagine there's outlets, right? Or are there?
No, it's just your Nikon strobe.
Okay.
We fire it from the camera, and I get one of my interpreters to hold it up in the corner of the hut or something.
Okay.
And and if it's a bit bright,
keeping it light.
Yeah, it would be impossible because the other thing too about these jobs, again, we get into the camps around 9 o'clock. It's a long drive to get to the camps, and by 10 o'clock, temperatures are up to about 38. Humidity is high, and my shirt is completely soaked through.
Wow.
And we work through till about 5 o'clock, and I don't have that energy anywhere else. I can't do that in London, but it's extraordinary that when you're working and the feedback you get from these people, it's hard to explain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and even, I mean, that's one reason it's so hot. We couldn't carry very much more than that. And to be honest, I even give the interpreter the D4 with the long lens on.
Oh yeah.
Just ask for it. We need it.
All right. No, that thing can definitely weigh down on you after a couple hours for sure.
Yeah.
So, obviously we mentioned how vast and how extensive the refugee crisis is in this area. So with nearly 1 million refugees in such a large area, how did you choose Cox's Bazar? And within that area, how did you choose the subjects? I mean, you probably had so many subjects to choose from. How did you choose the ones you specifically chose to photograph?
Well, we didn't really. The extraordinary thing about Cox's Bazar is it's just one place. So we have no choice about where you go, but certainly there must be choice about where you go within the camp.
Right.
But we would have a list. We would say, we're looking to see how people, manage and survive, but we're also asking to see medical facilities, local NGO facilities, as well. And basically, we have guides from quite a small NGO that we're working with, and they very quickly pick up on what we want to photograph, and say, look, if we take you here, you can see some children who don't have any parents here, or we can go here and see this problem here. So, yeah, it was, and it's just a question of being taken to various places as they saw what we wanted. And we would go down, they're not streets, they're like little lanes. And, we'd pop into each hut or each area and they'd say for us, we're photographers, we want to take pictures, are you interested?
Mm-hmm.
And most people were, and those who weren't, well, didn't get photographed, but.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you what the permission process was like. So it was basically just, you'd go up to a family or someone who you felt, represented a photogenic opportunity, and you'd asked if you could take their picture, and like I said, either they agreed to do it or you didn't, and if they didn't,
yes,
you moved along, right?
It's a straight understanding. I mean, it's completely impossible to get into the notion of model release forms and so on, and yeah, I mean, we're quite clear. There's no evidence in our books or exhibitions of somebody who's been even caught by surprise or is attempting not to be photographed.
Right.
I don't think you can look at our work and think that we have abused our position.
Sure.
So it's not.
even in the candid moments that you captured, it's still there is inherent permission and whatnot given in that instance, right? Like they know
Yes,
you're photographing and you have that agreed upon.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
And if we took a candid shot, and there were times, particularly outside of huts on the streets,
Sure.
um, we'd catch it, but then we'd stop them, and they'd say, "We've taken your picture. We'd like to take some more. Is that okay?"
Hmm.
And so, if you look at a candid shot in our book, and you really wanted me to prove it, I would go back to the archives, and I'd show, well, this is a sequence from it. You'll see
Right.
he or she was quite happy to be photographed.
Sure.
You know.
Absolutely. But you haven't, I mean, that isn't typically something we as photojournalists face, right? Because there is that understanding, hey, we're photographing in this area, and there is that inherent implicit idea that we're trying to capture these moments. But no, it's always great to get that permission if you can and approval from the subject, if not before the fact, then definitely after the fact, right? Because we want everybody to be on the same page and feel good about what we're doing, and
Right.
ultimately support and endorse what's going on. And
But
so it doesn't sound like there was too many problems getting permission. And again, you said there are other photojournalists in the area, so I'm guessing this group was generally used to the idea of other people with cameras in the region. So
no,
did you ever
no,
have any?
I don't think they were used to it. I think
Oh no, okay,
the, these photographers, I think one got in, but they were hanging around outside trying to get in.
oh okay,
And they found us in the evening in our hotel and
right.
said, "Can we come with you tomorrow? We've been here a couple of months trying to get in."
Oh, okay,
And yeah, I mean, the answer is no. And
right.
that, I mean, they can't come with us because it's a whole, I mean, yeah, there are soldiers at the entrance to this camp. And,
Okay.
okay,
So to even get in the camp to document what you did required a whole big approval process, right?
yeah. And by the way, Dave, that's nearly, I don't think I'm better than other photographers, but one thing I'm good at is the logistics of getting into these camps.
Okay.
How to get into Gaza, how to get into the Syrian refugee camps, the Lebanese refugee camps, and the Rohingya refugee camp. It's a it's a long, long game. You have to find somebody like say in the case of the Rohingya, a small local NGO, but are great. Okay, you have to contact them. You have to explain who you are, what you want to do,
Hmm.
and they have to say yes. If you can get your visas and your permissions, we can set up an itinerary for you. You can come in our trucks, in our cars, and then we say, well, in return, we'll be very happy if you use the photographs. We'll have exhibitions. We'll sell the books. We'll raise money for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And
And that is great to know that the proceeds from this book, or at least what I see online, is that proceeds from these sales of this book will go towards supporting the effort. Correct?
yeah, and by the way, that's always the case because we don't make money from the sales. I'm already funded by the time I start the project.
Okay.
So I went, when I knew I wanted to do this project, the Rohingya project, I went to the 3 or 4 people who often will pay for,
Hmm.
for the project and for the printing of the book,
Right.
um, and will agree all. That's
Okay.
one of the advantages of being in London.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
some people of that type of generosity at the same time, have
Absolutely.
the wherewithal to be able to give that.
Now, Anthony, I want to show you a photograph that I liked out of the book. I like many of the photographs, but this one stuck out to me only because I want to know the story behind it. So let me see if I can easily share that with everyone who is, watching the video portion. So this photo specifically right here on page 89 and 90
Right.
of all these boys who are looking at something. Obviously, they seem to be enjoying whatever they're looking at. Can you give me the background behind this particular photo?
Um, yeah, thank goodness it's one of mine. Um, um, okay. Well, the the a very rare thing we found in the camp. We found a cafe, and at the end of a day, they took us there for refreshments, what looked like slop food but tasted delicious, and a lot of liquid drinks too. You have to drink a lot. And we're sitting at this cafe, and because we're sitting, it's an opportunity to put the cameras on the table, put new cards in, check a few things, make sure we've not made technical errors and so on. And the kids have built up. They're fascinated on the other side, and they just looked a nice group. So I turned around, held up the camera, and they clearly wanted their picture taken. But it's quite dark there, so my guide has the flash, and they think the flash is the camera. That's why they're looking up.
Okay, interesting.
But I adore that look. There's something. Because they're looking up like that all together. It's gone beyond the camera. If they were smiling at the camera, kids often smile at cameras. It would be a more mundane photograph.
Sure.
But
yeah.
Something in this sort of dreadful refugee camp has kind of lifted them, and they look like angels. But they won't be in 10 years' time if they have no bloody education, Dave.
Yeah. I see there's the one kid in the back there who's kind of looking at the camera, like he knows what's up.
Yeah, he's spotted him. Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah, that's a shot that kind of stuck out to me. And there was another photograph that I especially liked, and probably one of my favorite photos in the book was of the girl who is dumping the water on her head. Is that your shot, or is that your partner's shot?
It's my shot, but my partner's holding the flash.
Okay.
So it's in broad sunlight, but we knew between us, if you want to get the water, you need a bit of flash.
Right.
So that's I struggle with that shot, Dave. I really struggle because it's a very it's popular, and we often use it.
Yeah.
But it's it is a true shot, but it's not that. It doesn't reveal the problems in the camp.
No.
No,
but I mean, in a book that is meant to again highlight struggle, right?
Yeah,
it is nice to see one moment of levity, right? In that, even in this,
and that's how
very difficult situation, there is levity, and there can be some joy in these children's lives, and that's all I thought about it when I thought about the photo. What kind of struck out to me is
it is a I'm very happy with it. I don't want to pretend I'm not, and also much of the water has been put on tap by the NGO I'm working for in Bangladesh.
Okay.
So they like that shot enormously.
Yeah. Well, it's good that they have access to that clean drinking water, because I can imagine it must be a very desperate location with regard to disease and other things like that. And,
yeah, it definitely
didn't have that, how much worse it would be, right?
Right. Yeah. Flooding is a big problem.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but because of the lack of trees, right?
And Bangladesh is mostly river. I mean, it's
what was there any particular photo that stuck out to you, or your favorite or most impactful photo from the book? Something that you particularly liked?
Luckily, I've got the book.
I can pull up the page as well if you tell me what page it's on.
Yeah, I think there is. Let me just try and find it. I like the ambiguity of this and the kind of the narrative that's in it. It's a rare shot because I rarely photograph from above. I always like to get down to the same level. But siblings, there's a lot of siblings, elder siblings looking after younger siblings because parents are either there's only one parent or there are no parents anymore.
Right.
It just means they kind of grow up much more. There's an ambiguity about the health of the child.
Okay.
The baby.
Yeah.
He is sleeping. I mean, he's not dead or ill. And it often happens with girls. They grow up quickly, and there's a look in this girl. She's obviously only 10, but she could be 20, 25.
Yeah.
And it's it's a look that I always sense in these people. It comes from the trauma that they've been through, and yet they preserve this dignity. This,
Sure.
she's not. She knows exactly what I'm up to.
Right.
Um, and and um, and I'm pleased for that. But I'm not sticking around for very long because she doesn't want me there. I don't think.
I know, right? Like, get your shot and get out of here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Wise beyond her years. And
Yes.
that brings up an interesting point, and something I noticed, and I wanted to get your take on it in terms of your decision, right? So obviously, many of these photos have stories behind them. You've expressed a couple here right now,
Mhm.
but in the context of the book, the only real text is in the beginning and a couple of quotes during it. What was the decision not to include captions with the photos?
It's one that we discuss a lot, and has come up very recently with the Gaza book. We might talk about, but um, the danger is that you get into the position of saying, sister with younger brother in hut, mother with family in hut. It's kind of hard. It's not like a travel log where it's interesting because you've gone from city to city.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's this danger of the captions being banal. Um, Mostly when you write captions, people like to know where it is. It's all
Mm-hmm.
in the same place. So,
Right.
um, but it was discussed, and just briefly, I don't know if you want to, but about 12 years ago, Jim and I were in Gaza after another Israeli incursion, and just now, the people who funded that want they never did at the time want a book produced from those images because they think it's very relevant now.
Yeah.
Um, and there weren't captions, but they're insisting on captions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my camera doesn't and didn't have satellite GPS, so I'm having to really think with Jim, where is it? Is this
Yeah.
Gaza? Is this Khan Yunis? Is it Rafah at the border? And why were we there? Who are these children? Are these children orphans, etc., etc.?
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting that people have liked the captions. So
Sure.
maybe next time,
Yeah.
well, the Gaza book will have captions.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, again, I come from a photojournalist background, so the idea of getting people's names and creating captions to go along with photos is again something that is second nature to me, and so I see the captions as a way to not only tell the viewer what's going on in the photograph, but also I think to
Mhm.
elevate the subjects beyond just random people in a location, but to give them names, right? To identify them and elevate them
Mm.
to something that is beyond just the subject on the page. And so that's why I thought maybe there had been a specific reason to omit them. But, again, I think if possible, they're always a great way to elevate and provide a bit more context and detail to any particular, view or image that's being shown. So, I was just curious, and maybe there was a difficulty in getting the subjects to want to give their names, right? In which case, yeah, you would then have sort of generic identifiers in the photographs, and it would be somewhat, um, I'd say, neither here nor there, right? It wouldn't add to the photograph. But I think
Right.
having their names and telling that kind of context, like what you did in that one photograph, would I think drive a lot home in terms of the impact of any given photo. But I was just
Yeah.
curious what the decision was behind it.
No, I don't disagree. It's logistically very hard as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, you've got a whole family who doesn't speak your language.
I know,
You've
right?
got to get their names. They have to. You have to make sure. You nearly have to look at your camera and say these names refer to frame 450 to 480.
Mm-hmm.
Then even then, it's not your language, so you can't be sure
Right.
which of the five people in that picture the name belongs to. And you are not you don't have all the time in the world.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, it's yeah, interesting.
No, I imagine there's probably a lot of those constraints that exist. And But you had an interpreter there with you, right? I imagine that would probably be necessary to even get throughout
Sure,
the camp,
sure.
right?
Yeah, no question. Oh, I would be lost. Yeah.
I know, right? Speaking of timelines, how long was your overall time inside the camps to capture all these photos?
That's 5 days. That's 5 days
5 days.
work. Yeah.
And was that 5 full days, like 5 full, like 8 hour work days, or are we talking like few hours a day, or how
No,
long did you have each
every
day?
day was over 8 hours.
Wow. Okay. So once you were admitted into the camp, pretty much you were on your own to be there for as long as you needed or wanted, right?
Yes. Yeah.
From a just safety perspective, was there a desire to want to get out of there before nightfall happened, or was there any consideration of maybe covering the camps during the day and
No, no, there wasn't. They do shut the camp down.
okay.
Everybody who isn't there has to be out by 6 o'clock, I think it was.
Okay.
But there was certainly no. We would have loved to have stayed and work in the nighttime as well. That would have been very interesting for us. And we did ask, but they just thought we were nuts. They thought we. And the truth is, we realized that when we got back to the hotel, we were completely wiped out. I mean, there would have been a danger, I think, that if we had,
Exhaustion, right?
yeah, it got.
You know, I thought was interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go on.
Okay.
No, I just want you to know that Cox's Bazar is not well known for this refugee camp. It's a very long beach. It's a 50-mile long beach, and it's Bangladesh's tourist area.
Oh, okay.
It's the tourist center. When you go to visit Bangladesh, all the tourists go to Cox's Bazar. So we're staying at one end of this beach, okay, and it's not Miami, but it's got these high-rise hotels all along the beach.
Sure.
And you cross over the road, and it's full of cafes and restaurants and people selling stuff on the beaches and so on. It's we've got hotel rooms and they're air conditioned and so on. And then it's about 2 hours drive. It's a really terrible road, but it's a beautiful road to the camp, to the world's largest refugee camp. It's kind of the contrast is,
Yeah, I imagine you probably get some whiplash there in terms of just how different one location is compared to the other.
Yeah. And all the international NGOs are based in this tourist part.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't sit well with me at all.
Yeah.
They're getting good meals and a beer at the end of the day.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's not. They should be on location or outside location,
or at least closer to it, right?
Yeah. But that's just the anger that builds up.
Yeah. No, so this is a relatively substantial book. I mean, you've got over 100 pages in it. But were there any picks that were left on the cutting room floor, things you would have liked to have included, or some darlings that you ultimately had to scrap just because of the what you had to get for the final edit?
No, it's
That's great. So everything you wanted, you basically got to put in the book.
When we're wanting to put the book together, half the book has to be Jim's work and half the book has to be mine. We're quite strict about that. And it always starts off with, there are about 50 pictures each in here. It always starts off with us being unable to get anywhere near the amount that's needed. We're always 3 times too many because we're so enamored with our pictures.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But then we swap. Then we send, say, the 150 I wanted in the book and the 150 he wants. And we pick out what we think are the best in each other's.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting that oftentimes when Jim has not picked my favorite ones and picked ones that I wasn't very sure about, and then convinced me that was much more important.
Yeah.
So it's a process I enjoy enormously, because it's a very polite way of being criticized.
What have you been criticized for?
When Jim comes back and says, "Not that one, Anthony, take this one," and I go, "But that one's terrific," and he says, "Actually, Anthony, it's not. It's either it's too sentimental, even photographically, it's all over the place, etc., etc. Take this one. This one is much more meaningful, okay, and reflects your technique much in a better way. And I do the same to him.
Yeah, no, it's great to have that second set of eyes and second
Oh,
opinion on your work, because obviously it's very easy to get, too wrapped up in our own work and not have that outside
yes.
opinion.
Right.
And let's talk about that relationship between you and Jim McFarland specifically on this book, because I thought there were some interesting caveats and things that, I haven't seen before with regard to a joint effort. It's not unusual for, multiple photographers or whatnot to work together on a single project. But obviously what's interesting and different from what I noticed in your book is that you didn't credit yourselves on each individual photo. So I don't know which photo was shot by him and which photo was shot by you. I'm curious if that was on purpose and what was the reason behind that.
Right.
And also what was the desire to do this as a collaborative project versus individual books, and kind of what went into that decision making as well.
It's a very, very conscious decision, and it's to do with the idea that it's very hard to tell whose picture it is. Let me explain that. We walk into a situation, okay, and we say this is the photograph we want, okay, and I might say, Jim, you get ready, get the camera sorted. I'm going to talk to these people. So I talk to them, and I set them and explain what's going on. And I said, Jim, they're ready. They'd like to do this. And Jim said, that's terrific. We need some lighting. Anthony, can you hold the lighting? And Jim takes the picture. It's definitely his picture, but it's not entirely his picture. He didn't, he partly set it up,
right.
And it's also the people whose picture we're taking. They're important to the process as well. So, and I set it up and I lit it, and even Jim will take the picture, look at it, and say, Anthony, have a look. And we might ask the guys to do something else, to move, to shift, something sticking out of their head or something. So that there is this complete notion that it is teamwork. And it's teamwork not only at the time of the shoot, it's teamwork even before we went to Bangladesh. We talk about how we want to take the pictures. We talk about, what technique, what attitude, how would the great photographers that we like, in the past have photographed it, Eugene Smith, how would he have done it? How would he have made it important? So it is a very, very, very collaborative business, and I shot the London book for myself, but it's a little bit easier because it was home. But there are days when I come back, say even off this Bangladesh shoot, and I think, and I hear Jim going, that's looking at this picture, going, I've got a cracker here, Anthony, I've got a good one here. And I'm thinking, I'm not looking because I've had a dreadful day, of my stuff. And I tell him that, and he has a look, and he says, Anthony, this is, not only does he say this is fine, he keeps my confidence up, and I'll do the same for him. But there is this sense that I can have a bad day because Jim will have backed that day up. He will have maybe had a good day. And so there's this balance. I don't have enough confidence, I think, to shoot for 5 days by myself like that.
Yeah. Like if one particular image wanted to sell that, would you then just decide who actually pressed the button to release the shutter, or is it each image is 50-50?
No, in fact, that is how it ultimately works. So when we have exhibitions, the prints are for sale, and they're signed and editioned. So only one person signs it. The person who actually took it.
Yeah.
It's still a bit irrelevant because we don't keep the money.
Right.
It obviously there's a certain relevance, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious. Okay. Interesting. So that's great that you two worked together and made that happen. That's awesome.
And we
talk.
Yeah. No, go on.
I was going to say, obviously, what is your thoughts on the future of the Rohingya people look like, right? Again, you've painted this picture, and it's not ultimately, it's hopeful and aspirational in that you hope that there is a future. But when I was reading the text and thinking about what's going on, it sounds pretty dire, right? And so, for
Yeah.
your perspective, as someone who's been there firsthand and is trying to get the word out about this, what does the future of the Rohingya people look like, right? Will they ever get that citizenship that they need? Or is it kind of like they're doomed to this life of constant turmoil?
Um, it, it's a difficult question, and it's often I avoid questions like that because hey, I'm just a photographer. I'm not
Right.
a political analyst. I don't think. I think this is going to go on for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think that. I mean, I just know because I've been talking to the Bangladesh ambassador here in London, trying to organise a launch in her embassy, and her attitude is so unreal. She thinks that they can negotiate with Myanmar government, and they can go back to their burnt villages and the burnt bodies of their families. So, I don't think that. And I've seen in other refugee camps where if you ignore teenagers, male teenagers, you get a lot of trouble. Um, you know, um, for a start, families marry off their daughters very early because that's the only protection they can have. So there's a whole. All I think that the work that I and Jim do in places like these camps is what I call short term. That it allows NGOs to raise money to get more facilities in, to maybe help build that medical facility, help put the water in, and so on. I think that's the best I hope for in terms of how much good does my work do. That it will inspire governments and the UN to find a solution in the next 2 years on account of my book. It's completely naive, of course. So I don't. And because of Gaza, I used to be very optimistic 20 years ago about the Middle East, partly based on travel there, but on the fact of friends here at university who were, who were Jewish, and I'm half Arab, and we would get on so well and have all the same values and attitudes. I thought there was definitely hope for there. But when I went out there 12 years ago, what I saw and photographed, I became very, very pessimistic. And all my work does. I mean, the Gaza book comes out very soon, and I'm hoping, Dave, I can send you the book, and maybe we do another interview if
By all means, please.
And all it does is is Jim and I see ourselves, if you like, as witnesses.
Yeah.
So, for example, this is not the first time that what's happening in Gaza now has happened. It happens every few years since 1948. And our book coming out, which was photographed essentially 12 years ago, the pictures look like the pictures you're seeing now that are coming in, except it's much worse now. So that all we're achieving is witnessing, telling people that this is nothing new. This is how it was before. And incidentally, this book already has made more money than any of the other projects. It's not even printed.
Wow.
It's because this incursion of the Israeli Defense Force into Gaza has become so divisive, become so central to world news, that people are so interested in this book. We're printing 1,000. I think we're going to go to a rerun. And again, there's no money to be made. It's all going to medical facilities in Gaza.
Yeah.
So it's so that it's some use. And that the pictures are 12 years old is, I don't know. I hate to say it because it sounds very smart. I'm a happy photographer. There are lots of great photographers out there. Many of them probably can produce better stuff than I can. But you know, I've been a photographer all my life. I've got this technique. I understand photography. I, you know, and I wake up in the morning and I want to get on with the project and photography. You know, I'm lucky. I'm lucky because all my commercial stuff, you aren't going to remember. You're not going to remember the beer cans I photographed for Heineken. You're not going to, all that sort of stuff's just nonsense. But
all right, well, let's wrap things up. You know, obviously it's a very important book, and I do want to talk about Gaza, and maybe when this new book comes out, we can talk about it because it is a very prescient thing that's, you know, very much in the news right now.
yes,
But tell me about when this particular book will be available, how much it'll cost.
It's available now. It's it costs £35 plus postage and packaging, which is subsidized. So and the money will go to the foundation mentioned in the book called the AtL Foundation, who work locally and work by donation. Yeah. Do you have the website where you could order the book?
I do, and I'll make sure to put those links to your website, to everything that people can get that directly from there. So that's great.
It is on Amazon as well,
yep.
But Amazon take a whacking great big cut.
Oh, really?
But it is on Amazon, that's fine too. And it would be good if people felt they could buy it.
Absolutely, no, 100%. And we know your next is going to be a book on Gaza, right? That's your next project.
Yeah, it's called 10 Days in Gaza.
Okay.
And an exhibition will be touring with that.
Okay, great. We'll look forward to that. Well, thank you so much for your time, Anthony. Really appreciate it. Great to talk to you again and hear about your insights and really the inside story on this book. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I just hope that other photographers will take inspiration. That it sounds, I mean, I know all my colleagues and friends think everything I do sounds dangerous, sounds, you know, risky, difficult. But if you are a good photographer and you have a conscience, it's not risky or dangerous. It's uplifting. It's yeah, it's inspiring. Go for it. Absolutely. More of us that do it, the better.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. There needs to be much more light shine on many of the different, you know, things that are going on in this world that are you know, many of us are more than keen to ignore or not even think about. So thank you for bringing to light what is, you know, an important thing that needs to definitely have more people thinking about it, for sure. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Anthony. I really appreciate it.
I love it. I love talking to you. It's great. Thank you.
I love talking to you as well. And it was nice to see you again, right? We had to do this again far sooner than we have, and I can't wait to talk.
Well, I think I think it's going to happen pretty much. Yeah.
All right. Well, I look forward to that. And I hope you all look forward to that future conversation. And again, I wish you all the best back in London, and look forward to again talking about your next book. Have a great one, Anthony.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks. Bye, Dave.